Is food still a topic of confusion for you in your life? Today's show is here to help. Deanna, hello, how are you?
Hi, Alex. Good to be with you.
I'm so excited to chat with you. I have followed your work and been inspired by your beautiful, calm, yet invigorating, peaceful images online and the way you show up in the world. Thank you for, I guess it's your hot take on how we can learn about the colors of the rainbow and how they impact us. I want to know, though, your journey towards that rainbow. Like, how did that take shape? Because we'll unpack your seven systems and things in a bit, but there are a lot of layers to it. So I'm curious to see how it sort of came to be for you.
I actually think I came to color as a way to heal.
Mm,
And if I look back at when I started to emerge through this portal of color and art and science and spirituality, it was as I was finishing my doctoral research. So I was in my late 20s. I was feeling really out of sorts. I just felt, anxious, depressed, lots of stress in my life. And I think under that vice of pressure, I went to something that I hadn't gone to before, which was painting.
hmm.
So, I began to paint and I began to paint using very bright colors on large canvases and large pieces of paper and surrounding my like the color was serving as a nutrient or it was connecting with me at a different level. If I look back retrospectively and go a little bit, like I would say into my late teens, I could say that, well, color was kind of tracking to some, I would say, explorations that I was also having in the yogic world. So I'm kind of two minds, or maybe many minds. Even though I love science and I was pre-med and I was a nerd studying science and all of these different biological disciplines, I was also really interested in art history. I was an English literature minor in college. I felt like I was missing something just being over in science. So as I started to explore more in the university setting, what I found was like, oh, there's more here. So I think that probably the first inkling of color and something more came then. But then when I actually had a personal crisis and started to go through this time period of stress in my life, I started to look at color in a different way. So I would say that's kind of how I got there. And me studying nutrition, the obvious was to apply and to look at the application of color in everyday eating. But then I realized that it was more than that. It was like everyday living. It was the colors we
Mm.
wear. You're wearing blue, I'm wearing green. Everything has resonance and value. And is somehow informing us through our eyes. Our eyes are, as the saying goes, windows to the soul, or, it's such a portal to so much of our brain and how we're perceiving the world. So color is a part of that.
100%. And I don't think it's any accident that you often find people who are strong in maths are also strong in music and the emotion of music. And
Yes.
that was me at school. I was like this polar person. I was like, but I don't know what to choose. And then, of course, you get older and you realize you don't have to choose. It's all a spectrum living within you.
Yeah, that's actually a really good analogy. I have noticed that as well with even a lot of my scientist colleagues. They were either very musically or artistically inclined in other directions. Like I had a really good colleague as I was going through my graduate school, and he was in band, and he would be in the lab with me late at night, and then he would be playing instruments like in his free time. You will also find within the scientific community that people tend to, I think when you study science, you start realizing there's mystery and magic and something really beautiful about life. So, what
Mm.
you tend to find is that scientists either start to veer more towards spiritual aspects or looking at the world in a very, I would say, heightened conscious kind of way. You look at people like Bruce Lipton or
Yeah.
a Joe Dispenza person, right? Carolyn Mace. I mean, not all of them were in a lab. I know Bruce Lipton was, but when you start to look at science through that microcosm, you start to realize, wow, there's a bigger macrocosm at play here. So I think science and scientists it's kind of a divining rod for, just like you said, music and mathematics or engineering and, loving something about crafting. So I
Mhm.
feel like it's a way of unifying what looks like opposites, but they're actually on the same trajectory.
Yeah, agree. Totally agree. Uh, and and so color became healing for you. Is it then that you tried to make sense through your nutrition and your work in nutrition? Because this sort of came along a bit later that I saw um, the seven systems framework, I guess, a way of understanding all the different layers between what we eat and our spirituality and what it signifies through an emotional perspective. Did you build it for yourself, for nutrition clients? How did that particular aspect come to be?
Yeah, so just for frame of reference, what you're referring to, this seven system
Mm,
operating system that I have pieced together over the years. This is an amalgam of everything.
yeah, it
This
feels
operating
like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And some people that come more from the spiritual yogic world say, "Oh, these are the seven chakras." Yes, there's a bit of that, but then there's also, these aren't technically chakras in the way that you would study them. Like they're how I have perceived my clinical work and in working with people and just through life experiences and pattern recognition of what I've observed in people.
Mm.
So sometimes I get criticism like, "Oh, this is not totally in alignment with the chakra system and you did this wrong." And it's like, well, it's not even presenting it as the chakras. These are,
Mm,
I am calling, seven systems, and they're based on what I have seen in patterns in people, in food, in scientific literature, and just using powers of observation. So I would say this whole chart, it really came about. I'm in my 50s now. This came about in my 40s when I was working on a way to teach other people how to bridge together science and spirituality in a way
mm,
that you could bring that into a therapeutic encounter with another individual. Because what I was finding, I was doing a lot of teaching of health professionals, and a lot of health professionals are really good at like the biochemistry and the sciency medical aspects, but they knew that there was more, and they didn't know how to bring the more into more of a medicalized, I would say, encounter with
setting.
a
Yeah.
person. Yeah, so, and I felt like it was natural for me, like, I would sit with people. You have to meet them where they're at, obviously, and some people aren't always thinking about the spirituality or the art or the color of it, and then other people would engage more on that, and you bring them in that way. So it was just a
Mm,
way that I was able to teach people and bring it all together, crowdsourcing what I knew about the science and my observations and experiences with more of the spiritual therapeutic setting with people. Also, like doing groups. I've spent a lot of time through my life teaching, and what I've always enjoyed was groups. I
mm.
learned so much. I feel like the group heals the group. And
Yeah.
whenever I would do them, even if it was a group of 3 people, 30 people, even more, I mean, I felt like I was learning from the group. There was this group energy that would take hold, but then you also have the power of the one-on-one. I spent
Mm.
a lot of time doing that as well, and that was a different kind of, I would say, again, a microscopic view, a macroscopic view, but they both taught me different things about people and observing different patterns with people.
Yeah, fascinating. And I'd imagine you'd get hecklers sometimes saying it like, how have you linked broccoli to love and pineapple to ambition? Like, please, where's the science? Like, I'm sure you would be challenged by colleagues in that setting. Like, what do you say when that comes up?
Well, I mean, most of what we do in the world is about language and how we communicate.
Mm,
So when we talk about these seven systems of health, I connect them to body systems. So when we're talking about broccoli and the color green and the cardiovascular system, I can make a case for,
Mm,
and in fact, I've even published a paper on this in the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism where I took each color and then looked at the science that would support that body system with that color. So when
mm,
we look at, and it's not like plants or food works like it's in a box for one thing.
mm.
That's why
Of
pomegranate
course.
is,
Yeah.
it's red, and we could say, oh, wow, it's great for the immune system and the gut, and it's good for many things. So there's an acknowledgement that it is cross-talking with multiple organ systems, but that there
But just
is
like the body does, right? Nothing is
exactly,
disconnected.
exactly.
Mm,
I would say, though, if you want to know about hecklers and where I get the most flack, it's
mm.
not even that. I get the most flack about anti-nutrients.
Oh, okay. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, so anti-nutrients are called, it's just like a
Like
big category.
phytates and what have
Phytates,
you.
oxalates,
Mm,
goitrogens. The big one is oxalates, I would say.
mm,
Also, sometimes phytoestrogens sneak into that, lectins. So the reason why that becomes a point of contention for people is because I talk about the rainbow diet. So eating the rainbow, meaning getting colorful plant foods that inform us through phytochemicals. But what I am also not saying, but there's that piece. However, that doesn't mean that somebody has to be vegan, vegetarian, that they have to eat to a certain dietary pattern. I'm just
yeah,
talking
they
about,
don't have to start going raw vegan. It's more actually about inclusion rather than exclusivity.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, because even a carnivore is still getting phytochemicals, very small amounts, but you're still getting them from the animal that ate that plant, right?
Mm,
We are all connected into plants, whether we like it or not. It's 80% of the biomass on the planet. And plants are informing animals and informing us whether we're eating animals or we're eating the plants themselves.
mm,
So, what I would say there is that when people say, oh, Deanna, these anti nutrients, you talk about eating plants, but then a lot of these different plant foods give my body issues. And
mm,
so they're anti nutrients, they are blocking the absorption of minerals, or they're causing me to have kidney stones. And what I would say to that is often in nutrition, we look at things as a yes or no. And you and I were talking
mm.
about this before we came on live, but
Yes.
in a very polarizing way. It's like black, white, yes, no, yin, yang. It's like two sides rather than like a spectrum. I'm the spectrum person because there are different gradations. So when people talk about anti-nutrients, I like to turn the table a little bit and say, did you ever think that, instead of calling these things anti-nutrients, they could be signaling nutrients? Maybe those oxalates are actually indicating you have a mineral imbalance or a mineral insufficiency, or your uptake or your gut microbiome is insufficient to the point that you can't break down oxalic acid. The other thing is that if we think of polyphenols, you know how polyphenols have become like a buzzword,
Yeah.
buzz phytochemical? Well, tannins, which are
Mm,
seen as part of being an anti-nutrient, tannins are actually polyphenols. So we could see, it's like our life view. Do we see the universe against us or for us? And I would believe that with plant foods and some of these plant compounds, that we might actually see these modulatory signaling kind of effects from these compounds. And by the way, plant foods aren't just one thing anyway. It's not
mm,
like we eat lectins. We eat complex composites of different compounds all coming together, some of which may be seen as anti-nutrients, but depending on how we prepare those foods, may change the levels, may change the bioavailability, and change their activity in our bodies. So I
mm.
think there's a lot more to the story. Nutrition has been riddled with so much, I would say, pendulum swinging. I mean, when I started in nutrition over 25 years ago, it was like the Atkins approach, and then it became, something else. And it's always there's
Absolutely. I
always
mean,
a
all you
shiny
had to
object.
I remember being a teenager, like, and you'd watch Oprah on your school holidays, and she'd have the latest, in the 90s, early 90s. Suzanne powder and the brown rice diet and the thing. Like, I
Yeah.
remember so many of them. I remember my mum buying a grapefruit knife, and all of a sudden she was only eating grapefruit until midday. And then,
Oh my.
we've done so many bizarre things. And I think I'd love your take on this. I see it as people find safety in the definitive. Like,
Yeah.
please tell me what it needs to be, and I will feel safe there because I know what to do. And anything that's a bit gray or a bit nuanced, and it's why we see the polarization. We find safety in camps. And I think we're somehow drawn to that from a lizard brain kind of safety aspect sometimes.
100%. In fact, even when I first started out doing nutritional kind of consulting and coaching with people,
Mm.
they wanted so much of that. They wanted the structure. Tell me the food, tell me the calories, tell me the
Yes.
recipes, tell me how much every day, what time. And I felt like, for a certain part of that, it felt like the nutrition police. It's like, so I'm scrutinizing everything about your eating, like what you're eating, how you're eating, where you're eating. And it felt like it was unnatural to have somebody on the outside to tell somebody their personalized needs. We've come a long way. Since 2003, since the Human Genome Project, we have now started to morph the field of nutrition science to the point that now we are looking at personalized responses to food and now seeing that there's a gender difference, women and
Mm.
men. There's a life cycle difference. Postmenopausal women respond differently than premenopausal women to certain things. So we need to look at the personalization. And I think that this is becoming more to the forefront. I mean, it's definitely in the science. It's a really archaic to just talk about general nutrition guidelines without acknowledging that there could be gene variants in how
Mm.
we would process certain foods, right? So I think we have come a long way in nutrition science. And for the people who haven't let go of the old structure of safety and rigidity and needing to be told what to do, we're slowly moving out of that. And I think that for those people, they will resume locus of control or have some structure through devices, right? That's what we're
Mm.
seeing. Apps, devices, wearables, where now actually you can get real-time feedback that is incredibly more accurate than going to a one-off visit with a practitioner who is supposed to like divine all of your information in, like a 30-minute consultation. So now
Yeah.
I think we have the best of all, where we have practitioners who work with devices, working with feedback, people have health teams, and it's all in the spirit of personalized responses. And I feel like, I mean, that's just where we're going, and that's where we have started to go within nutrition, which is very refreshing.
Mm. I want to come back to what you were saying about the anti-nutrient argument and how you flip it and say, well, what if that's actually sending you a signal that there's something bigger at play? And I love that because we've seen with the uptick of chronic disease, inflammation, environmental impacts from poor housing stock, mold, now EMFs as well. Like, we're in a bit of a soup that is sometimes quite hard to process for the body. And so there's stress, and then things like oxalic acid. It's a great example because there's work to do. You don't just go, oh, okay, so now I
Mhm.
only eat 6 foods in my diet. It's a
Right.
sign to do work, not a sign that that food is bad. And that's a really important distinction.
Well, that's how I see it.
Mm.
I do think, obviously there can be toxins in plant foods and in foods in general, right? And so we'd have to manage that. But I do think that these quote unquote anti-nutrients, they're telling us something. So let's go through them quickly. So with
Yeah.
lectins, one of the really unique thing about lectins, which typically you find in things like uncooked beans and legumes. Not many people
Mm.
are eating uncooked foods or foods that have seeds like, people are concerned with like nuts and seeds that might be higher in lectins, especially if they're raw, because lectins, if you're cooking or you're using slow, low methods of moist cooking, you
Mm.
tend to eradicate or lessen the amount of a lot of these anti-nutrients, actually. I think what has
Yeah.
happened is a lot of us are going beyond traditional ways of food preparation, and we're downing 12 ounces of raw kale juice when that has not been the norm.
No. I mean,
There's
Chinese medicine has taught
yes,
us for thousands of years, if you have digestive qi issues,
yes,
cook it slow and low, and
yes.
it will be far more gentle on the system. And it's so true.
It is true, and I really like that you mentioned that we need to go back to ancient wisdom because
Mm.
many of our anomalies and problems and root causes could be coming from what we're doing to the food itself, or
Yeah.
even, how the food is grown in the glyphosate. But with lectins as an example, you find we wrote a review article on this, and you find in some cases that certain lectins have immunomodulatory properties. So they may actually be helping the immune system to better respond. So if somebody has a leaky gut or has issues with their immune system, could they create inflammation, or are they creating more of a response? Potentially, yes. So maybe for some time they need to avoid lectin containing foods or cook their food to a level that they have very low amounts. Like that could help in the healing of their gut. I think for many people, they have a lot of gut issues. And
Mm.
if your gut's not well, then you're going to process and respond to different things in foods in a different way.
Yeah.
And that can cause some of the inflammation.
Mm.
So I think for things like that, goitrogens, which are tend to be high in cruciferous vegetables, again, some very mild amounts of cooking and steaming and just you start to inactivate some of these compounds so that they're not problematic.
Mm.
So that's where, again, back to Chinese medicine and making sure that we have cooked versus raw foods, especially at certain times of year. So seasonal eating, that's also another important piece because polyphenols, which again could be seen by some as anti-nutrients, they tend to be facilitating a lot of that shift in our bodies as it relates to the circadian rhythm. And
Mm.
what we're learning now about, in fact, I have a presentation I'm giving in a couple of months on phytochemicals, certain ones that that basically help with the chronorhythm. So they help the body to tell time better. And there's nothing to me, I mean, this is just such a beautiful
That's
concept of the
amazing.
circadian rhythm,
Mm.
that nature threads time through us, through our master clock in the brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which then goes through and informs peripheral clocks so that all of our cells are oscillating to nature's rhythm, right? And that certain phytochemicals can come in and help that process along, like certain the polyphenols that I spoke of and about. So I think that it's just kind of interesting. Like again, if we are attentive to nature, we're attentive to seasons, we're attentive to circadian rhythm and other rhythms, then I feel like we'll be more in alignment and we'll be
Mm.
healthier.
Yeah. 100%. And it really is about finding the bio-individual intersection between people having actual issues and then sifting out well, this is actually your bio-individual n=1 situation. That's
Yes.
you, either because of ancestry, genes, whatever. Or this is actually something we can work on because it's signaling that there's something wrong. Am I arriving at the right distillation there about where we're
Yeah.
at with
Yeah,
nutrition? Okay.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
you summarized it nicely. Yeah,
Mm.
so it's not to say that somebody may not have an issue with lectins. They may very well have an issue. Like some people with autoimmune conditions do have an issue with lectin containing foods. So they need to work on
Mm.
their gut, they need to work on their immune system. And they seem to fare well without some of the legumes and other grains in the diet. Now, you could say, well, is that because of the lectins or is that because of something else? And that's where
Mm.
I feel like the jury is out. You know,
Yes.
in nutrition, we
Mm.
like to pin the tail on some
It's this. And
ascending
then let's create
compound.
a supplement company. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
we don't know. Food is complex. We always
Mm.
focus on us, like, oh, I'm so complex. I've got all these genes and it's all about me. But, the food has its own, where it's grown. Those nutrients will vary depending on its location.
Yeah.
So it's really a dance. Nutrition to me, the essence of it is it's about relationship. It's about relationship between nutrients. Sometimes we become so enamored with things like magnesium. And then it's
Mm,
like we start just hammering down all this magnesium, and then we're not attentive to, okay, are we throwing off our calcium balance? What about our other ultra trace minerals?
mm.
I have found that in nutrition, like we just get swept away. The shiny object syndrome of like, oh, this latest supplement, this is all I need. And then we kind of move over to something else. And I'm guilty of this because studying nutrition, I saw that in my colleagues where, you study something and then that becomes your world. So my
Mhm.
PhD, as an example, my doctoral work was on essential fatty acids. So when you're immersed in essential fatty acid literature for 4 years, you're going to start thinking, even within the first 6 months, that everything is because you have an essential fatty acid imbalance.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you can't help it. So
Mm,
I can see how a gastroenterologist would think all issues are about the gut. I would think how a neurologist would think all issues are about the brain and the nervous system. It's just the nature of how we tend to study things without having the holistic, more of a renaissance approach of seeing the whole. And that's where,
mm.
again, I feel like science can benefit by seeing things in a more holistic view and in a more spiritually macrocosm type view as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you actually talk about detoxification in a different way to most people, which is about holistic detoxification. And it's
Yeah,
not just that you need to remove these granular toxins from your body, but you need to look at your whole life and what has caused a broader sense of toxicity as well.
it's true. And I give credit
Mm.
to the people that I have seen more in a clinical setting for that insight. You know, just to back up a little bit, Alex, so I grew up Catholic. And so
Mhm.
as part of the Catholic tradition, and I went to Catholic school, like, the whole thing, like all
Oh,
through.
me too. So you
Did
felt
you really?
yeah, you felt your 20s and your 30s was actually just trying to break away from the having to feel guilty about everything. Yeah. I always
Well,
joke.
and also the practice of giving something up, like through Lent,
Mm,
and as I started to study nutritional detoxification, I was realizing there's nothing really woo-woo about this. This has
no.
been in existence since humans have been around, whether
Mm,
it's in Judaism, Islam, or different religions. There was always something about a giving up of
mhm.
something in order to see oneself clearer and to be in a more spiritual context, right? So when I started to do these nutritional detoxification programs with people, what I noticed was that when they started to let go of their way of eating, this started to change their way of living. And then I
Mm,
came to this kind of a mantra or a philosophy of how we eat is how we live is how we eat. And I started to see that when people would go through even a 21-day elimination diet, they had some huge life shifts, like
yeah.
major, like meaning like I've had some people that wanted to quit their jobs. They were just fed up. They got clear in their head. They had the energy to say, I've had enough. I'm quitting. Or I've had people as well, and I've had people who wanted to end relationships, friendships,
Mm,
partnerships, marriages, and feeling like this is too taxing for me. So you could say, well, what does this have to do with nutrition? Well, I think when you change your biochemistry, you change your psychology. When you
mm,
change your psychology, you change your behaviors. When you change your behaviors, you start changing your life. So actually, nutrition is such a beautiful portal. It's a physical portal to more of our psychological self and being that can create enormous change. So that's why I created Whole Detox, because I was feeling like through all of these nutritional detoxification programs, they were incomplete. I didn't
mm,
have the so I like I like operating systems, I like structure, I like something to hold it all together. And I was sensing that I had an incomplete way to contextualize this experience that these people were going through. So then I
Mm,
started to take each of these different systems. So there are 7 different colors, and I started to connect them with a toxin. So the
mm,
first one was like food toxins, emotional toxins, thought toxins, lack of movement, certain words that we would say that were polarizing or, not very life promoting, or even looking at lack of healthy sleep, lack of connection to nature and to one sense of meaning and purpose. And to me, it was like there was a spectrum of things that were standing in people's way and preventing them from being healthy, vibrant, and content and happy in their life. So
mm,
that's how I came to a more expansive definition of detoxification, because it's not just eradicating glyphosate and toxic metals. Sometimes I've seen people in my programs where they've done all of that. Like they eat so clean that they still have
mm.
emotional baggage.
A
They still have
100%.
ruminating thoughts,
Oh my
right?
gosh. Yes. My first program it's called Golo Talks, and I think I launched it 10 years ago now. And it's like all the little things that you do day to day that can swap out and change and ditch. And I felt instinctively that we needed a meditation Sundays, like where, you were just meditating, you're focusing on your mental health, your well-being, and just it not being this stress and this race to become
Right.
clean. I'm so glad I did that because I could see in this group, you talk about group education and the group
Mhm,
healing the
mhm.
group. I could see a lot of A type, like, got to get this done in 30 days and got to, um, sort of taking over the energy. But then the first Sunday came with the meditation, and I was able to infuse a bit more positive psychology into the mix. And ever since, ever since, I have recognized, as you have, that it is so important to put people's well-being, general, healthy, holistic well-being at the
Mm,
center of anything granular you might also be working on at that particular time. Because I've seen many a stressed out, I've gone organic person get to the
yes.
friend's barbecue where there isn't any organic food and feel like a failure, or get shitty that they're going to have to starve because there's no real food here, all that kind of stuff. And you
Mhm.
think that is not the point. That is not health.
That's orthorexia. And I
Yeah.
think that stayed very well because
Mm,
I've been in that place of, again, when you study nutrition, that becomes your world, then you become really
it does.
preoccupied,
Yeah.
right? It's almost like you have to unlearn certain things and see exactly what you just said, that you've got to focus on well-being. Because if you look at the literature on psychoneuroendocrine immunology,
Mm,
PNEI, I mean, a bout of stress can lead to leaky gut. So it's like, are you going to stress over that meal or, and not having
mm,
it either way? Like you could still inflict leaky gut. So to me, I do think that we need to be attentive to our body as a temple and our mind as this sacred space of what we're bringing in, because stress can change us, and it can
mm,
change how we digest food. It can change the state of the gut. It can change the state of the heart. So, yeah, I think it has to be a full spectrum approach in that way.
mm.
And
Yeah.
bringing in love too. I do think that love, prayer, intention, meaning, purpose, we look at those things as like secondary, like, oh, I'll deal with those things when I've got the food down. But quite
Mm,
honestly, I've seen some pretty healthy people who aren't as food focused, but they are more focused on those other aspects, like the sense of love and expansion, the sense of intention and mindfulness. And you could say those are not tangible things. Those aren't physical things to have structure. But yet you see these people and they do quite well. And in fact, you see some of that in the blue zones work, right? With centenarians, people with a sense of
mm,
meaning and purpose. It's not like people in all areas of the world are only eating organic and toxin free. I mean, sometimes I think that I've been asked this question before about, just even meaning and purpose. And if there was a supplement to give people meaning and purpose, that would probably be the only thing we need. And I say
Yeah.
that a little bit lightly because it's
Yeah.
like, it just shows the gravitas of meaning and purpose, because meaning and purpose, if you look at the literature on it even, there's something called PIL, purpose in life. And you can go to PubMed, you can look at the science. It's profound. When
Mm,
you have purpose, that gets you out of bed in the morning. That drives your circadian rhythm forward. That gives you the sense of like your heart is open, your blood is circulating, your blood pressure is going to be more normalized. You're not going to be stressed and crunched, and you're going to have this sense of like you're all in it for this purpose, right?
mm,
So, and then the sense of mental health issues, they start to go down with, increasing purpose and meaning. And so I do think that that's really important. And if we don't deal with those things early in life, they come around later in life. And I've seen that for people in their 60s and on up, where they retire and then, they have to put on a new tire. They have to retire because otherwise,
mm.
in fact, I was just talking with my husband, who's an acupuncturist, and he was telling me, I mean, some of his patients, they are retired and they become depressed, anxious because they don't have anything now to direct their sense of life force into.
Yes, it's so important. And I think a lot of stay-at-home women can often then, like, the kids are gone and then the
Yeah.
grandkids are at school. And that usually hits in the mid set like 70, 75.
Yeah.
And we see declines there because it's like, well, now what? Oh, it's too late for me to do anything. But I just think it's never too late to do something and to think of your interests and to get into volunteer work or whatever to
Yeah.
give your day a sense of shape beyond preparing meals.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a balance of living in the moment,
Mm,
being present with your life. I get that. But then there's also, and I think that this comes around to like self-care and nurturing and, just it's like that gives us that's good medicine too,
mm.
to just be in that place of like nurturing a cause, nurturing a mission, nurturing something outside of ourselves can be really good for us as well. I feel like it's a two-way street.
Yeah, it is. And so, how did you make peace with, you mentioned orthorexia, and there is a lot of it
Yeah.
around. How did you make peace with imperfection and you don't have control over things all the time when it comes to food?
Did I say I made peace with that?
Like, I don't know.
No, 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 no. I'm teasing you.
Yeah, I just think sometimes we have these perfect views of nutritionists on Instagram, right? And they even talk to us about how they would prefer to fast on a 24-hour long haul flight than to eat the crappy plain food.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I just think, well, sometimes I remember my tin of fish and to bring my little lemon for some nice water and sometimes I don't.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just don't worry about it. I don't know how I managed to not. I think it's because I became so sick with mold a few years ago. And I've like the kind of sick where you're like, does this mean I die soon? Like, and that is
Mhm.
dark to have that experience.
Yeah.
And I think since that, I am just so chill about not sweating the small stuff and actually
Yeah.
just being incredibly grateful for the
Yeah.
other aspects to the experience that I might be having at that time that
Yeah.
are truly great. I'm on my way to Europe to see my family. Like, screw the weird Chinese chicken thing that I mean, it's at least going to fuel me and I'll be able to sleep because I won't be hungry. Fine. I'll take that as a win, you know?
Well, actually, I like that you brought up this whole thing about going to Europe. And, one of the things that I've done throughout my professional life is I've done a lot of travel. I've been to
Mm,
Australia, I've been to South Africa, Asia. I mean, I've lectured in a lot of different places.
yeah.
And I think that when you travel, you start to see that people all over the world, just different ways of living. And if
Mm.
you were to constrain yourself, that just creates more stress when you travel. Like when my husband
Yes.
travels with me, he said it's a very unique experience because I'm in my most low stress state possible because it's like I'm not in control of the plane. I'm not in control of delays. when in Rome, eat like the Romans. Whenever you're somewhere, like when we were in Iceland, I loved it. I just wanted to eat like an Icelandic person.
Mm.
Like, let me eat the fish and have all of the fish oil and everything that they're doing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I really like it because I really want to get to know people. And also it cultivates diversity,
Mm.
diversity of the brain and diversity of the gut. So I
Mhm.
also can rationalize this a little bit scientifically, like, okay, even if I'm off how I normally eat at home, I'm actually cultivating diversity. I'm cultivating health in a different way. But as far
Mm.
as your question about imperfection and perfection, and not to be glib about it, because I think, I kind of laugh about this because this has been like my thing, like, just really trying to like hone in and get healthy. But it's almost like, you don't want perfection to be the enemy of the good, as the saying goes, right? And like that
Yeah.
can be unhealthy on its own. So I have let go. I have become more, and I would say again, this probably happened in my 40s where I started to realize my mom had actually said this to me many years ago. She's like, when you get into your 40s, you're just going to feel more yourself. You're going to be more authentic, more true. You're just going to see things in a different way. And she was totally right. And in my 50s, it's even more so, especially as I've gone through menopause. It's like,
Mm.
it's like you do the best you can.
Yeah, I don't got enough
Don't
estrogen
sweat
for
it.
that. Yeah.
Just let it go and,
Yeah.
try out different things. But the
Mm.
most, you start realizing your mortality too. You start realizing, like, wow, I only have like a couple of decades, perhaps. So many people are like focused on, I'm going to live to 120 and all of that. For me, that's not important. What's important for me is really like quality of life. I
Mm.
start realizing it's like, I've done so many awesome things. I'm grateful. I just really want to like savor. I want to like this is like a savoring time. So
Mm.
that's why I don't want to get stressed out because I feel like, it'll just put me put me back and I'm going
Yes.
forward into this different time of life. So, but I do think that many people, to your point, they struggle with this.
Mm.
And that's why I moved from being the nutrition police into being more of a nutrition, I don't know, like a spiritual
A
nutritionist because
Sherpa.
like
Yeah.
yeah, whatever we wanna call it.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
no, it's like, go with your own inner guidance and your voice
Mm.
on that. Like, trust yourself.
Mm.
It's
Oh,
really
you can feel that people don't trust themselves. Yeah, it's where's my protocol? Where's my diet? How do, yeah, back to that, right? And
right.
it's just the permission is there and you just have to accept permission to trust more. Mm. Oh, I
It's
love that.
true. That's
Yeah.
part of healing. That's really part of it. Um, and I do think, if we think of this 7 systems, I kinda see this like how we go through life. 0 to 10, high adrenals, establishing our identity. Then we move into the teen years, and it's like we're flowing with relationships and we're learning how to manage emotions. The yellow, the professional time of life. We're in our 20s. We're trying to break ground on who we are, what we are in the world. The green, the heart space. We're moving into maybe creating families or creating infrastructures of groups. We move into the 40s. We move into like speaking our truth a little bit more. So my mom
Mm.
didn't even know about all this, but it's like she was so right on about a lot of that. And I think that's where, sometimes thyroid issues start to crop up, a lot of autoimmune, like who am I authentically? A lot of these things start to come up here for evaluation. And then
Mm.
moving to the 50s into the time of wisdom and insight. And then finally, like going forward into purpose, meaning. And again, it's almost like you come full circle onto like, who are you? It's not
Yeah.
even linear. There's like a beautiful circle of life that happens in its own way. But I do think that, we're living in times of great change.
Mm.
So whatever is out there and up for people to look at, even if it's like a small thing, because as we know in quantum biology and quantum science, small changes can create big effects. And so in our mind, it might be small, but through our body and through our consciousness, it could actually be the thing that turns the key,
Mm.
moves us into greater well-being. So
Oh, I love that. And I'm going to finish with a little question that is a bit fun because I would love to know what your personal desert island foods would be. You, Deanna, decades of nutrition experience, teaching, lecturing, writing books. What would you personally, and prefacing this by saying these are Deanna's foods, these don't have to be yours, and it doesn't make them the most perfect foods. But I'm very curious to know what you are drawn to right now as your, oh, I just don't want to go a week without those. I love those right now.
Okay, so I would say if you're saying about the week, lately for me it's been pomegranate and blueberries.
Hmm.
I really feel like they give me so much energy. But I also, when you first asked the question about the desert island before you said about the week, the first thing that came to me was cocoa.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would
Chocolate, dark chocolate,
definitely have
and
that on my list. Yeah.
dark chocolate, oh my goodness, filled with mood-altering flavonoids and
Hmm.
filled with, such great antioxidant potential, and we can find pros and cons of every food, but I would say, since I was small, I've always had this resonance with, like, this dark chocolate, and if I had
Mm.
to be stranded without dark chocolate, that might be a problem. It's gotta be good quality though. It's gotta,
It
like, fit
does.
fit all of my criteria, but I could be very happy on a desert island with lots of chocolate.
Hmm. Love that. Fantastic. Pomegranates, blueberries, dark
Yeah, and
chocolate.
actually, I love that
Yeah.
combination. In fact, this
Mm.
morning I was just gifted with 18 fresh pomegranates from somebody's garden.
Oh
So
my
this morning
gosh.
I was picking out I was doing this old school, just like, I was taking each pomegranate and I was like, I love this fruit. It's so
Yeah.
vibrant and I mean, obviously it's full of polyphenols and a lot of goodies, but there just feels like there's just goodness within a
Mm.
pomegranate. It's a very auspicious fruit, like in the Middle East, and also like I was in Cyprus one year. They were telling us how when a couple gets married, they throw a pomegranate into the house,
Mm.
fertility and, just bringing in abundance.
Yeah. Well, there's so much in a pomegranate. So you can
Yes.
see the symbolism of it.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Absolutely. And blueberries, I mean, I just, they're magical. Blueberries are just so good for the brain, and that would keep me sharp on a desert island, I'm assuming, and work very well with the cocoa, the
Yeah.
chocolate.
Yeah, I'm with that combination. I love it. I could talk to you for hours, but our time has come to an end. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on the show. It's been
Oh,
such a pleasure meeting you after all these years of following your work and bringing this gorgeous conversation to our community to hopefully have everyone feel a little bit more peaceful and also a sense of personal agency.
yeah.
You're a smart person. You know what works for you right now. Like
Yes.
lean into that. That's fine.
Well said. Yeah, no,
Mm.
this has been great, Alex, and thanks for all of your great work on detox and what you've been doing with groups. It's fantastic, and
Aw.
hopefully when I'm in Australia next, we can meet, and I'd love to meet and see all the things that you're doing.
Brilliant. Well, we might just have to run a little nutrition event or something.
Oh,
Yeah,
that would be
that'd be
great.
good. Okay,
Yeah.
stay tuned, folks. We'll tee that up sometime. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
I hope you loved today's show as much as I loved bringing it to you. I want to remind you that if you are someone who craves a low tox community that is judgment free, full of empowerment, has health professionals and building health professionals that can support you, as well as me in there answering questions multiple times a week, I want to invite you to join the Low Tox Club. For the price of less than a cup of coffee a month, you have an annual membership for $49 Australian, so it's about $30 US or euro, that allows you to have a member masterclass every single month with a health professional or global expert from the podcast, where we have them to ourselves for an hour to ask questions and deep dive further. You have the beautiful supportive chat group. You have Q&As with me answering questions. We read books. books and talk about them, and a whole bunch more. You can head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the Explore tab, and join the club is the very first option on that list. Of course, we have over 10 evergreen courses that you can jump into anytime, whether it's navigating everyday low tox swaps with our Go Low Tox signature course, whether you have kids and you're wanting to know how to best support them with our Low Tox Kids course, whether you're planning a family and looking at a healthy low tox preconception journey, reducing inflammation, especially the chronic kind, with our Inflammation Ninja course, many other courses. You can again head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the courses tab, and you'll see all of the options, which includes a business course, my Low Tox Method program. A lot of people don't know, but I was doing a lot before starting Low Tox Life in 2009, and I was a business consultant across hospitality, health, retail, and cosmetics. I have been in business consulting for a very long time, so I absolutely adore helping people move into the low tox space or develop their low tox businesses. So that's a way I can support you. And then, of course, there's our wonderful social media communities at Low Tox Life on Instagram, and of course, the website with over 250 gluten-free recipes, blogs, downloadable PDFs to help you navigate wanting to get rid of synthetic fragrances in your school or office. I could go on. So head to lowtoxlife.com, see what takes your interest or fancy, and thank you so much for being a part of our podcast community. I love reading your reviews. I appreciate every follow and subscribe, and I want to just remind you to finish off that if there's anything you heard that you found interesting from a medical or scientific perspective, it is intended as education only. Please always chat to a health professional who knows you and your situation best. I'll see you next week. Bye.